Very happy to be here this afternoon at the invitation of the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry to launch a book. They asked me some time ago, and I thought it was very interesting and very useful with the role of the Indians in Singapore, and of course now with India liberalizing its economy, the stronger links between Singapore and India. This book is actually very timely. This meeting with the Indian business community here is part of the number of meetings I've been having over the last 5 weeks with a large number of groups, Chinese Chamber of Commerce, Indians, other chambers of commerce, to learn a little bit more about what are the issues and concerns. I feel that whoever is the next president of Singapore has to address the concerns of Singaporeans. What are their aspirations? What are the issues which bother them? Tuesday I met with the trade unionists. They obviously have a different perspective on what is important to them. And you got to go around and mix with various groups, not only with the business group, but also with social welfare groups, charitable groups, which I'm doing quietly, not only with what we call important sort of groups, but other people, owners of coffee shops and so on, which I met at lunch yesterday. Different people have different interests. And that's the main purpose for my coming here. I'm very grateful to the SICCI for inviting me. It's just nice that they're also launching this very important book. So we're able to combine and this informally networking and mingling with the guests here gives me a very good insight directly into what are the views and problems. I think that's going to be very valuable going ahead, and that's why I'm here.
Can you tell us a bit more about your campaign plans? Dr. Tan Jun Bok has said that he plans to go around shopping malls, hawker centres, and so on.
Well, I've just told you about my campaign plans, and that is to find out more about Singaporeans and to the various issues, and I'll continue to do that. Of course, I will find occasions to meet with people in other settings, in markets, shopping malls, places where people meet to interact with them, hawker centres. I think these are all very important because I think that one has to cover the whole ground, not only the business groups, but the ordinary man in the street, because everybody has different problems. Everybody looks at the world from a different point of view. And you just can't look at it from a top-down level. You can look at it from a bottom-up level. In that case, then it gives myself a better idea of what concerns Singaporeans now. I must say that wherever I go, I mean, everybody has individual problems, right? They have particularly something which affects them. But the general theme, wherever I go now, more and more now, is the economy. I mean, what's going to happen to Singapore? How will these problems in Europe and the United States affect us? I mean, every day you open the press, it's very depressing, you see more problems. It's the global economy is an area which I am getting worried day by day. Just 6-7 months ago, we have had this ongoing, continuing problem in Europe about the debt crisis, starting with the peripheral countries, Greece, Portugal, Ireland, now spreading into even the larger economies like Spain, Italy. Yesterday in Europe, the cost at which Spain and Italy can borrow on the market has risen to all-time highs. Italy is the third largest economy in Europe, so it runs into trouble. This is big problems. Fortunately, up to that time, we've always had a strong US economy, and that provided some ballast for the world economy. Now, with all the problems of debt, they cobbled together an agreement at the last minute to prevent the US from going into default, which would create chaos throughout the world because it would threaten the US AAA credit rating for their treasury bills. Recent economic indicators in the US give the feeling that the US economy is slowing down, may even be stagnating. And if this goes on with high unemployment rate, we may have a double-dip recession in the second half of this year. I think this is very serious because, it's not one set of problems in Europe. Now you're compounded by another set of problems in the US. So the way things are growing up, I think things are building up to having what I might call a perfect storm of economic problems which will affect the world economy. For the time being, Asia is doing well, bearing up all this, but as you have just read, the governor of the central bank in China, Zhao Zhezhen, has expressed very grave worries about this. He knows that if the US cannot recover, stagnates and goes down, with the problems in Europe, China cannot just go on their own. They will be affected. Asia will be affected. Singapore will then be affected. How will our countries, how will our companies cope? Then it depends on what the US does. If the US tries, the way politics are in the US, there's no longer the possibility of having any fiscal stimulus, pumping money. So the way they can do it is by monetary policy, which is having another round of what they call quantitative easing. So QE3, flood the economy with money, keep interest rates low, hope that companies will expand, employ more people. They don't worry about inflation because they have high inflation because they have high unemployment there. But this money will wash out of the US into other safe havens like Singapore and Switzerland. What does it mean for us? It means inflation, higher rate inflation. It means rising prices. It means a stronger Singapore currency. Same as in Switzerland. The Swiss franc has risen, I believe, against the US dollar by more than 10% within 1 month. That is serious because if that happens, the competitiveness of your economy is at stake. Our Singapore dollar against the US is now 120. Many people predict it will go even lower. It is difficult for our companies to cope if this appreciation is rapid because you can raise productivity, you can raise skills training, but you can't do it so quickly. All of this takes time. So I believe the government is conscious of all of this. They are taking note of this. How this will develop in the coming months, one do not know. Let me just finally, put things in perspective. I think there is a possibility in the coming months, as I said, of having a perfect storm of problems which will affect the global economy and eventually affect Asia and Singapore. We are not in the crisis yet. If things don't turn out well, we could be in a crisis. Then I think we'll have real problems. So we are in uncharted territory now. I hope that governments in the US and in Europe will work things out, because that's very important. Singapore is not a price setter. Singapore is a price taker. We are too small to affect all of this, but we are affected by the repercussions. We'll see what happens. I do hope that what happened in 2007 and 2008, 2007, I said there were dark clouds facing the global economy at the time. Nobody quite believed it. Then, of course, 2008 and 2009 happened.
How would this relate to your role if you are elected as president?
Well, with my background in these areas and with the knowledge which I have of the financial markets and of the global economy, I believe that I will be able to make a contribution to and help the government and the ministers who are involved in this to understand the situation better. Because I work in these fields for the last 20 years, both in the private sector as well as in the public sector, as executive director of GIC. So I have an intimate knowledge of all of these areas. And it's really because I see I see the dark clouds on the horizon coming on, that I feel that, I was very comfortable in SPH and GIC. It's no reason for me to leave these jobs, which I love. But with these dark clouds coming onto the horizon, I felt that how can I just stand aside, and be comfortable in my own sphere when all these problems will affect Singapore, when I know that I have the experience, the knowledge, which could help the government in order to cover all these problems. Of course, within limits of what the President cannot do. The President is not a power center. The President cannot have executive powers. But the President has knowledge and experience. And he can share this with the government officials. And I know them very well, all the ministers. And maybe they will listen to me, because I've worked in this field for many years.
So, Dr. Tan, as President, what can you do in your role as President in a way that you cannot do in your role as GIC?
Well, I think that as President, I can work more closely with the government. And as I say, with all political parties, I can't directly tell the government what to do, but with the knowledge which I've gained at GIC, GIC is not a government agency. It's a private sector company owned by the Ministry of Finance. And I will hope that as President, I'll be able to use the knowledge and experience which I have, again, to convey the concerns of the people to the government, and perhaps to give my views on the global economy, how it may affect Asia and Singapore. It's up to the government to take the decisions, though. That's all I can say. Thank you very much. Thank you.